Rain tapped against the windows as Lena sat in her small bridal room, the white silk of her wedding dress pooling around her legs. She had spent months imagining this day, picturing the smiles, the hugs, the laughter of family gathered to celebrate, the love she and Daniel shared. But now, as her phone buzzed with a message from her mother, a cold knot formed in her stomach. Don't expect anyone to show up. At first, Lena blinked, thinking it was some cruel joke or maybe a moment of nervous humor. But the words didn't carry the warmth of a joke. They were flat, cold, calculated. She looked at the time. The ceremony was just an hour away. Panic prickled at her, but there was also a strange, creeping disbelief. Could her mother really do this to her on the most important day of her life? She opened the family group chat, hoping to find some explanation, something that would make this make sense. Her heart sank as she read through the messages. Her siblings were laughing, exchanging plans, agreeing among themselves to avoid the wedding. Her aunt commented that Lena had never really been one of us, and her uncle added that this was just a lesson she needed to learn. Her mother's name was in bold at the top, the final message leaving no room for misunderstanding. Let's make this the day she finally learns her place. Lena's fingers trembled as she dropped the phone onto her lap. She felt like she had been punched in the gut. Years of trying to earn their approval, bending herself to fit into their expectations, seemed meaningless now. They weren't just absent. They were actively conspiring to hurt her. Her chest tightened and tears threatened to spill, but she blinked them away, trying to control the rising storm inside. She remembered the mornings of her childhood, waking up to cold glances instead of hugs, hearing subtle criticisms that made her doubt herself constantly. She remembered trying to impress them, to be the daughter they wanted, only to have it dismissed or mocked. She remembered wishing for love, for family support, for someone to stand with her. And now, in this room, in the rain, all of that came, crashing back with brutal clarity. But it wasn't just sadness. A flicker of anger ignited inside her. Small at first, like a match struck in the dark. Her mother had always had the power to make her feel small, but that power was earned only because Lena had given it to her. She realized now that the sense of betrayal was different. It wasn't just disappointment. It was recognition that they had never really wanted her happiness. The wedding, the love she had fought for, was meaningless to them. For a moment, she considered calling Daniel, telling him what had happened. But she knew he would be devastated, and she refused to let their cruelty touch his joy. She could feel his anticipation waiting for her at the altar, the pure trust and love in his eyes. That thought kept her grounded. She wasn't going to let them ruin this day, not completely. Her phone buzzed again, and she glanced at it reluctantly. More messages. Her mother had sent a picture, a faded, old photo of Lena as a child, smiling with a birthday cake, with a note typed over it. You were always too naive to understand us. It was a reminder, a subtle but cutting message, meant to break her confidence and dignity. Lena's fingers curled into fists. The tears she had fought to hold back now burned her eyes. She realized then that what she felt was not just hurt. It was a sense of injustice, a need to fight back, even if she wasn't sure how. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass, almost in rhythm with her heartbeat. Lena leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment she had spent seeking approval from people who didn't care for her happiness. All the times she had swallowed her feelings, hidden her true self, walked on eggshells. They had been meaningless to them. And now, in the harsh light of this betrayal, she felt a spark of clarity. She began to think about revenge. Not violent. Revenge, not dramatic confrontations, Just a quiet, controlled way to make them feel the weight of what they had done. Maybe it would be enough for them to understand the damage they had caused. Or maybe it was simply for her own sense of justice. Either way, she felt the pull, a combination of anger, grief, and the need for empowerment. Lena rose from the chair, pacing slowly in the room. The dress rustled softly as she moved, and the mirror reflected a version of herself that she hadn't fully recognized before. The woman in the reflection had endured years of subtle cruelty and neglect, but now there was a hardness in her eyes, a resolve she hadn't felt before. This wasn't about punishing her mother for fun. It was about reclaiming control over her own life. The thought of walking down the aisle and facing Daniel made her smile faintly. She realized that the love she and Daniel shared was real, and it existed outside of the toxicity of her family. That was the first time in a long time she felt that she had something truly hers, something that no one could take away. For the first time, she understood that power didn't have to come from hurting others. It could come from choosing herself. But still, the anger simmered beneath the surface. Lena opened her phone again, scrolling through the messages one more time. The words of betrayal, the cold planning, the laughter at her expense. It all burned in her memory. She wondered how her mother could feel justified, how anyone could plan such cruelty with calm conviction. It was incomprehensible, yet painfully real. She sank back into her chair, hands gripping the edges. Her mind raced with questions and possibilities. Could she confront them? Could she simply walk away and let them regret it? Or could she use this moment as a turning point? A day that would define her life not by their cruelty but by her own choices. The wedding music began faintly in the distance. Guests were arriving, unaware of the storm inside the bridal room. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the betrayal and the potential of what could come next. She knew that this day could either break her completely or mark the moment she began to take control of her life. For the first time in years, Lena felt a strange combination of fear and exhilaration. Fear of confronting the truth about her family, and exhilaration at the idea of finally stepping out of the shadow they had cast over her. She clenched her fists, not in anger alone, but in determination. This was her day, not theirs. Her mother's message had been intended to shatter her. Instead, it had lit a spark that would grow into the fire of her resolve. Lena knew that she had a choice to make, one that would affect not only the rest of the day, but the rest of her life. She could let them control her emotions, or she could decide what power they held. And in that moment, sitting alone in a room filled with soft rain and the soft rustle of silk, Lena made a silent vow. She would not be broken. She would not allow their betrayal to define her. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the first step toward reclaiming her life, and perhaps exacting the quiet justice she craved, would begin today. The storm outside matched the storm in her heart, and for the first time, Lena felt fully alive in the midst of betrayal. Lena stepped out of the bridal room, her dress brushing softly against the polished floor. The wedding music floated faintly from the garden outside, mingling with the distant chatter of guests. She could hear the soft footsteps of people arriving, unaware of the storm raging inside her. Daniel waited at the altar, his eyes bright with anticipation, full of trust and love. She wanted to run to him, to throw herself into his arms, but something held her back. She needed a moment, just a moment, to sort through the chaos in her mind. In the quiet hallway, Lena sank onto a bench, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The group chat messages glowed on the screen, mocking her. Each word they had written, each plan to avoid her wedding, weighed on her chest like a stone. Her mother's voice, though silent on the screen, felt loud in her mind. She could almost hear the smug satisfaction in it, the sense of triumph at having hurt her. And yet, the pain was mixed with something unfamiliar, a spark of determination. Lena realized that she didn't have to be crushed by their actions. She could respond, not with anger, not with words, but with strategy. She began to think clearly for the first time in hours. Revenge didn't need to be dramatic or public. It didn't require confrontation or screaming. It could be quiet, controlled, precise. She could show them the life they had tried to deny her, and they would understand the consequences without her ever raising her voice. It was a subtle, careful plan, but the fire in her chest told her it would be effective. Lena's thoughts flicked back to Daniel. He was waiting, trusting her completely. She couldn't allow her family's cruelty to touch him, to stain this day. He deserved joy, not betrayal. For the first time, she realized that her desire for revenge didn't have to be about punishment. It could be about taking control, about choosing herself. She smiled faintly at the thought. This was not about making them suffer. It was about showing them they didn't control her anymore. She opened her phone again, staring at the group chat. Her mother's messages, her siblings' mockery, her aunt's cold commentary, all of it. Lena felt the familiar pull of anger, but she didn't act on it immediately. She let it simmer, observing it, understanding it. Each word was a reflection of the life she had endured, years of bending herself, hiding her feelings, sacrificing happiness to please people who never cared. Now, she had a choice. She could let their cruelty dictate her emotions, or she could redirect it into something constructive. Lena began typing a message, not in anger, but with a clarity she had never felt before. Thank you for confirming what I needed to know. I won't be reaching out again. Not today. Not ever. She paused, her thumb hovering over the send button. A part of her hesitated. This was permanent. Cutting ties, even virtually, felt like cutting a part of herself, the part that had longed for their approval, for acceptance. She swallowed hard, feeling the familiar sting of doubt. Could she really do this? Could she sever the connection that had defined so much of her life, even if it had been toxic? Her mind raced with scenarios. What if they begged for forgiveness later? What if they tried to explain? What if she regretted it? But deep down, Lena knew this was necessary. For years, she had given them power over her emotions, over her sense of self-worth. Today, that ended. She realized that the revenge she was contemplating wasn't cruelty. It was freedom. And in freedom, there was power. The music outside swelled, a reminder that the ceremony was moments away. Guests were arriving, their voices filled with excitement, with love, with joy. Lena could almost feel the contrast between their warmth and the cold emptiness her family had left behind. That contrast only strengthened her resolve. She would not allow herself to be defined by absence or cruelty. She would step into the life she wanted, and they would not be a part of it. Her thoughts turned to the wedding itself. She imagined walking down the aisle, surrounded by people who loved her, supported her, and celebrated her. She imagined Daniel's face, bright with happiness, his hand reaching for hers. She imagined laughter, dancing, and the joy of a day untainted by their malice. The image steadied her, gave her courage. She realized that the best revenge wasn't confrontation. It was living her life fully, showing them that their absence mattered less than they thought. Lena's fingers hovered over her phone again. She scrolled through the chat, reading every cruel message, every mocking comment. She let herself feel the sting one last time, acknowledging the pain without letting it control her. And then, with a deep breath, she pressed send. The message went through, and she immediately blocked the group chat. One by one, she blocked each family member who had contributed to the betrayal. It was final, and yet it was liberating. She felt a weight lift from her shoulders. replaced by a strange sense of clarity and calm. Sitting there, Lena realized that revenge wasn't about making them suffer. It was about reclaiming herself. Every plan she had imagined, every thought of punishment, paled in comparison to the power of simply choosing her own happiness. She could feel the anger slowly morph into resolve, the hurt into determination. She had made a choice, and that choice was hers alone. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the air crisp and fresh. The world beyond the bridal room felt alive, full of possibility. Lena stood, smoothing the folds of her dress, and walked toward the garden. Daniel's eyes found hers immediately, and she felt a surge of warmth and relief. He didn't know the storm she had weathered, but he felt the calm she carried now. She reached for his hand, and he smiled, sensing her strength, her peace. The wedding guests clapped as she walked down the aisle, but Lena barely noticed them. She noticed the sunlight reflecting on the flowers, the gentle sway of the decorations in the breeze, the love in Daniel's gaze. She noticed that she was finally choosing herself, not reacting to the cruelty of others. The anger that had burned so brightly in her chest was still there, but it had transformed. It was no longer a weapon, it was fuel, a reminder that she had survived, and she could thrive. As the ceremony began, Lena felt a profound sense of control. She had faced the betrayal, acknowledged the pain, and made a conscious decision to move forward. Her revenge, if it could even be called that, wasn't dramatic or vengeful. It was quiet, subtle, effective. She was living the life they had tried to deny her, and that was enough. Lena realized that revenge often loses its power when the person who is wronged takes control of their own life. Her family's absence could no longer define her, and their cruelty could no longer dictate her emotions. The choice to step into her own happiness, to block the negativity, and to protect the joy of this day was the strongest statement she could make. As the vows were exchanged, Lena felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The storm inside her had settled into a steady calm. She had faced the betrayal, planned her response, and acted with purpose. And in doing so, she discovered something more powerful than revenge. It was the freedom to live on her terms, unshackled by the pain others tried to impose. And in that moment, Lena knew that the true power of revenge wasn't in causing harm. It was in reclaiming life, reclaiming dignity, and proving to herself that she could rise above the cruelty and betrayal she had endured. The music swelled in the garden as Lena stood at the edge of the aisle, her heart hammering in her chest. Outside, the sky had cleared, leaving soft sunlight to dance across the flowers and decorations. Guests murmured with excitement, unaware of the storm that had raged just an hour ago. Daniel stood at the altar, hands clasped, eyes bright with love and anticipation. Lena wanted to run to him, to let the day wash away the pain, but first, she had to face the final weight of her choice. Her phone rested in her hand, the last message she had sent to her family glowing faintly on the screen. It was a simple line, calm and clear. "Thank you for confirming what I needed to know. I won't be reaching out again. Not today. Not ever." The message had been sent, the contacts blocked, and yet her heart still raced. Revenge wasn't a momentary act, it was the slow burn that followed betrayal, the internal reckoning that demanded courage. Lena felt that burn now, pulsing in her chest like a drumbeat. She had acted, but now she had to step into the consequences of her choice. Could she really walk away from them completely? Could she accept their absence without bitterness, without needing them to suffer in return? The aisle stretched out before her, lined with friends and family who had chosen to celebrate her, not criticize her. Their smiles were warm, their eyes full of genuine joy. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the contrast between this support and the absence of her own blood relatives. The pain of abandonment was still there, sharp and raw, but it no longer controlled her. She realized that revenge could take many forms. She could lash out, shout, make them feel the weight of what they had done. But would that truly heal her? Or would it just deepen the emptiness they had created? A soft breeze carried the scent of flowers as Lena lifted her gaze and saw Daniel waiting, every bit the partner she had imagined in her dreams. His smile, gentle and unwavering, grounded her. In that smile, she saw the life she could have. One not dictated by cruelty. One defined by love, trust, and shared joy. The fire of anger inside her flickered, and she understood that the real power of revenge was choice. The power to step forward, or step back, to act with purpose rather than impulse. As she began to walk, Lena's mind raced with scenarios. She imagined confronting her mother, letting the words pour out in one long, satisfying release of truth. She imagined the hurt on their faces, the shock of realizing that she would no longer tolerate their manipulation. That thought brought a rush of adrenaline, a dark satisfaction. But alongside it came the reminder that anger was temporary, and that it would not heal the wounds already carved into her heart. The steps down the aisle felt surreal. Each footfall pressed into the soft grass, yet each step was heavier with thought. Lena weighed her desire for retribution against the life she wanted to live. She could carry the pain like a shield, or she could release it and move forward. The guests clapped softly as she passed, sensing her nervous excitement, unaware that she was making a choice that would define her forever. At the altar, Daniel reached for her hand. His warmth spread through her, calming the storm that had consumed her thoughts for hours. She looked into his eyes and saw not just love, but unwavering trust. For the first time, Lena realized that she didn't need to hurt anyone to prove herself. Her happiness could be complete without vengeance. Her family's absence, their cruelty, they didn't have the power to taint this day unless she let them. But the pull of revenge was still there, a whisper at the edge of her mind. She remembered every slight, every cold word, every moment of being dismissed and belittled. The idea of making them feel the pain they had inflicted was intoxicating. It was a temptation she had never fully understood until this day, and now it called to her in a voice that was both familiar and dangerous. Could she act on it without losing herself? Could revenge ever truly bring satisfaction? Lena's fingers tightened around Daniel's hand, and she made a choice. Not to lash out, not to confront, not to create more pain. Instead, she chose life, joy, and love. She chose the family she had built with Daniel, the friends who had stood by her, and the self-respect she had reclaimed. The decision was electric, releasing a surge of relief and clarity. This was her revenge, not in making them suffer, but in refusing to let them continue to hold power over her. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged, heartfelt and steady, and Lena felt a profound sense of release. The anger that had burned in her chest now transformed into calm determination. She realized that the most satisfying revenge of all was not visible to the eyes. It was internal. It was knowing that she had survived betrayal, made conscious choices, and stepped into happiness, despite the absence of those who had tried to hurt her. As the officiant pronounced them married, Lena felt a rush of exhilaration. The storm inside her had settled. The fire that had demanded action had been channeled into strength, into agency, into life. She glanced at Daniel, and his smile confirmed what she already knew. The love they shared was stronger than any hurt inflicted by others. She didn't need to see the guilt on her family's faces to know she had won. Her victory was quiet but absolute. After the ceremony, as guests cheered and laughter filled the garden, Lena reflected on what she had learned. Revenge could take many forms. but the most powerful was choosing oneself. The pain her family caused was real, but it no longer dictated her choices. She had confronted the desire for retaliation, weighed it against the life she wanted, and chosen peace over fury. That choice was her triumph. Lena understood that her family might never recognize their wrongdoing, might never feel the sting of loss. But their absence, which had once been a source of despair, had become a catalyst for growth. The betrayal that had threatened to define her life instead became the turning point where she claimed control. Every moment of hesitation, every thought of revenge, every tear shed alone in the bridal room had led to this. A day of love, strength, and self-determination. As the evening sunlight bathed the garden, Lena felt an unshakable sense of clarity. She had faced the ultimate decision, and she had made it consciously, with purpose and dignity. The temptation of revenge had not been ignored, but it had been transformed into empowerment. She realized that true satisfaction did not come from seeing others hurt. It came from knowing she had acted according to her values, that she had not allowed betrayal to dictate her future. That night, as Lena danced with Daniel, surrounded by laughter and music, she felt a profound sense of freedom. The past could no longer hold her hostage. Her family's cruelty had been neutralized, not through confrontation, but through her own choices. She had reclaimed her life, her happiness, and her sense of self-worth. The quiet, deliberate act of stepping forward without hatred had become her ultimate victory. In the end, Lena understood the moral of her story. Revenge is rarely satisfying when it is inflicted on others. True power lies in reclaiming one's life, in choosing love and happiness over bitterness, and in refusing to let betrayal dictate one's future. She had faced the temptation, weighed it carefully, and emerged stronger, more grounded and free. And as she held Daniel close, Lena knew that the fire of anger she had once felt had been replaced with a light that would guide her through every challenge ahead. The path of revenge had been tempting, but the path of self-respect and love was infinitely more rewarding. This was the choice that mattered. This was her justice.